Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So I'm hearing to grab a book. This is the one. So, beginning our session this morning, as I always do, I talked about this a little bit on Monday, which is having these sacred rituals for working with energy when I'm calling people together like this is a way for me to hold safe and sacred space. Good morning. So, anyways, if you want to find out more about that, you can check out the Inner Guide meditations and teachings from Monday. So today I want to talk a little bit about, I just put out a new blog post, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And I also have been hearing really strongly to talk a little bit about crow medicine. So we'll talk about that as well. Good morning. So let's just start by connecting with our breath. So let's close the eyes. Maybe roll the shoulders down and back. Turn the head side to side. Look up and down. Maybe even reach the arms up. Interlace the fingers, turn the palms up, draw the shoulders away from the ears. I'm tight in my shoulders today. Take a deep breath into the chest. Exhale. Good morning. Interlace fingers behind the back. Lift the hands away from the low back. Lift the face. Good. Let's just do a couple seated cat and cow. Good. All right, and then we'll just find a comfortable seat and close the eyes. Allow your awareness to come to resting on the breath. And let us call in and on our guides and our ancestors, those who hold our highest good and well-being at the forefront of their intentions of working with us. We'll call in all 7 of the directions: east, south, west, north, above, below, and within. Call in all of the elements: earth, air, water, fire, ice, and ether. I'm also calling in the distance Reiki energy, so that's flowing through our session today. So take a moment here to offer up any gratitudes or appreciations that you have this morning. I'm feeling very grateful for everything that has been handed down to me through my ancestral inheritance. I've been learning more and more about that recently through some studies I've been doing. But whatever it is that you're feeling grateful for, and also setting any intentions that you have for your day today or for this session. Good. And then as you're ready, you can gently open the eyes, coming back into the room. Good morning. Hey, everybody. So, okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about, I've been sitting with some ideas for sharing information. I've been learning a lot during this time where the focus is really about withdrawing and spending more time alone. There's been sort of a weeding out of things that have been drawing on my energy that are no longer in service to where I am, and I haven't always been clear about what those things are. And so that's been a really beautiful opportunity for creating more focus in my personal practice, in the offerings, and just my life's work. Like what I do in my life are not separated by it all. It's all intertwined. And so this time has really been beneficial for me in finding that focus. So what I wanted to talk a little bit about today is I just put a blog post out yesterday, and it's the first of many, I think, because I feel like I've sort of just scratched the surface by putting some of these things into a form that I can share in writing, which is exciting and something new for me that I've been engaging in. But the blog post is about, the name of it is Introduction to Developing Your Intuition, and it's part 1, because as you can imagine, this is a pretty in-depth subject, but it's something that keeps coming up in these sessions. It's something that keeps arising is as I cultivate even more focus in my own personal practice, recognizing that everything is resting on the development of this one particular skill for me, is learning how to develop my intuition. And so one of the things that I discovered while I was writing this blog post was that there are some foundational practices that, after looking back and reviewing my own process, are really super important. And one that we've talked about many times is this idea of setting the intention. So most of the people that all of the people that I work with have a very strong practice as far as connection. Many of them are walking some version of a shamanic path with intention. And so a lot of these things end up being review, but I find that even in review, like when I go back to doing a basic, introductory yoga class, I always learn something new, and it really helps me to dive a little deeper. And so that's something that happened while I was writing this. So the very first thing that came to mind was this idea of setting the intention and asking. It's such a basic thing that in order to connect ourselves to information that we want to know more about, that we want to sit with in a deeper way, the first thing to do is to ask. And what that does, in my experience, and of course this is always about you feeling into what is authentic and what is meaningful for you. So I'm just sharing what I've learned, but that's my path, and how you come to it is meant to be the whole point, right? Is like giving yourself permission to find it in your own way. So it's so basic, but when we ask, we organize our energy in such a way where we're receptive. We're opening ourselves up to being receptive to whatever it is that we're intending to cultivate. And so when we're working with our intuition or wanting to bring a bigger focus into our intuition, the first thing that I recommend is to spend a little bit of time thinking about and reflecting on, why is it that you're feeling called to that? And it's not so much to like pinpoint something or to nail it down or to like figure it out. It's just to allow that energy of flow to open up, because there's something that's inspiring us, and we may not even be able to fully put our finger on what it is, but just by setting that intention, we open ourselves up to understand on a deeper level where we are within our own process. So setting the intention to work with your intuition on a deeper level, and then asking for support and guidance. And again, when we do that, we're opening ourselves up for the whatever you want to call it, universal intelligence, great mystery, life force, God, whatever name and form you want to use for what I understand to be the energy that pervades behind all. It's constantly wanting to align for our highest good. So when we're very clear about what it is that we want to connect into, it then conspires to bring that information forward to us in such a way that we can receive it. And in my own personal practice, I often refer to this as direct revelation, is when I receive information that comes to me in some form that uniquely speaks to where I am. So that would be the first thing that I recommend, is setting the intention and asking for the information to be revealed. The second thing that I think is really important to talk about is this idea of unlearning and questioning. Regardless of what your political or religious views are, if we take the time to dive into some of the agreements that we have made in our life since the time that we were born, and even possibly before, that maybe have come with our familial lineage, when we start to dive into those agreements that we've made, sometimes they are unconscious and we don't realize what a profound effect they're having on our life and on the decisions that we're making and the choices that we're choosing and how we're moving. And so one of the things that I recommend is taking some time to reflect on and start to become aware of what some of these agreements are, and start asking whether or not they actually are in alignment with us. And this can be very eye-opening, very empowering, and it can also be unsettling. And so just to understand that that's natural, and, to be very gentle and kind with yourself if you do come across an agreement that you perhaps have made without even realizing it and have been playing it out in your life, and it's been having a very profound effect from a perhaps subconscious place. And so questioning those things and reflecting on them. And so in the blog post, I offer some opportunities for doing a little bit of journaling around that. And again, it's not to bring any kind of criticism or judgment to any of these things. It's more about awareness. What is it that's driving us, and where are we making our choices from? And to call this into, focus within our lives helps us to understand where some of the places could be less accessible as far as our intuition. Because when our intuition arises, it's going to come in contact with the patterns that we've been playing out for however long, right? And so in order to allow our intuition to really fully bloom and take a focused position in the forefront, it's unraveling some of the things that perhaps suppress it because of these agreements that we've made that perhaps we're not even aware of. So that's something that I bring up in it. The other thing that I think is really super important, that I really, as a core belief, wish was pointed to much more in our culture, is the idea that you can trust yourself. It's, to me, extraordinarily important, and was one of the most powerful changes and choices that I made when I started to give myself permission to trust myself, because I often was so busy in a place of trying to figure it out, or judgment around how I was moving in the world. I never just gave myself permission to be. exactly who I am and where I am and what I'm doing, and knowing that like that's okay. And so really loving ourselves unconditionally and learning to trust ourselves is a big piece of allowing our intuition to take a front seat. And so some of the things that I talk about in this particular section are working with emotional navigation. So I learned, I'll be honest with you, I learned a lot of this and fell into this from Abraham Hicks. Learning how to tune in to how we feel as an indication of whether or not something that we're choosing or something that we're doing. Oh, that's great. I'm so glad that this is lining up for you this morning. But if something is in alignment for us or not, that we can literally feel it in our body. I talked about this on Monday as well. If we gave ourselves permission to trust what it is that we're experiencing, and when the physical body sends us signals that tells us that we're uncomfortable in some way, I have found that it's often because it's trying to communicate to me that something is askew. I need to pay attention to something isn't in alignment for me. But again, this returns back to this idea of these agreements that we've made that perhaps we are completely unaware of. And so again, reflecting on those agreements is very important, because culturally, and when I say culturally, I'm talking about family culture, community culture, and that can include any kind of organizations that we're a part of. There are these baseline agreements that we make in order to be a part of these systems, okay? And so even if something doesn't align with us, we may be choosing to engage with it so that we can remain connected to the larger group, right? Like our identity and our like how we connect into the world. So emotional navigation is something that's very has become very important to me. And the idea of following my true north, and like, what does that mean? How do I feel that in my body, and how do I identify it? So that's like the first step, is to just notice, like on the daily, you know, if I've made a plan, if I've, you know, made something in my schedule, or I give myself permission to continuously review what's showing up for me throughout my day so that I can determine whether or not it's still in alignment for me. And people who are close to me over the years, as I've developed these skills in my own life, I've used compassionate communication to share with those who are closest to me those values that I've developed, so that if I, say, for example, decide to make a different choice about how I'm spending my time, it doesn't come across as something that's, you know, personal, or people who know me well just understand that this is how I operate because I've communicated that this is how I operate. And to be a part of my life is to honor, respect, and uphold that value that I carry. And as part of our agreement as, you know, like being connected to one another. So that's really super important. So tuning into your emotional navigation, noticing like what feels good to you, moving towards that, and things that don't literally feel good to you, finding ways to compassionately move away from those things. And that doesn't mean that it happens immediately. Sometimes you recognize something in your life that isn't in alignment with you anymore, and the process of changing that can be a very long path, because there are things to learn along the way in order to develop the necessary qualities and characteristics to shift whatever that is. Okay, so emotional navigation, if you want to learn more about that, I highly recommend listening to Abraham Hicks. She talks about it all the time, and it's where I learned a lot of it. The other thing that I have learned that has been extraordinarily beneficial is that I don't need to know why. When I find that there is something that I'm not in alignment with, it's a no. Like, it keeps showing up as a no, even though, like, I might want it to be a yes. Like, mentally, I'm like, oh, well, that sounds good. And, like, in theory, it all fits. But, like, in my body, it's like, no. I'm like, what the hell? Like, what is happening? I don't understand. I don't need to understand. It doesn't matter. That's what I have learned. So, another big piece for me has been learning how to manage my energy and watch out for energy leakages, places where I'm just sort of losing vital life force through things that are not important. And so when I pinpoint those things, I really ask for guidance about how to shift and change that. And so one of the biggest things that I've learned is that I don't need to know why. If it's a no for me, that's it. I won't lie and tell you that my mind won't go back to it. It will keep going back, being like, I really want to figure this out. Are you sure we can't just figure this out? Let me look. And like, I just keep returning back and keep telling the mind, like, you don't need to know why. It's okay. Trust. Just trust. It will all be revealed in time, and it always is, whether it's in a day, a week, a month, 6 months, 10 years. I've had that happen. So learning to trust our intuition is also about learning how to recognize the signs and signals that are coming, and that when we get an indication that something is not in alignment for us, however that shows up, because for everybody it's different. Some people see things, hear things, know things, right? Their spiritual gifts or their subtle psycho-spiritual gifts we're all unique. And so how we do that is very, very different. So again, you don't need to know why. It doesn't matter. So the more we can let go and trust, so this returns us back to trusting ourselves, okay, it's going to save us energy and give us, continue to bring us to that focus of trusting the information that's coming from the unknown, where we can't necessarily pinpoint, because as human beings, we always want to try to figure it out, and we want to be able to like validate like what's going on. And I can promise you that validation comes. It may come in forms that are, not found in textbooks, but the validation will come. I promise you that. The other thing I recommend is opening yourself up to all forms of information that are flowing in. So something I speak to in this offering, this blog article, is invite your imagination in, really embrace it. Invite your inner child, the one who knows how to derive meaning from all aspects, and doesn't question, but like really honors what is coming from the unseen. So allowing all forms of information that are flowing into you, and giving yourself the space and place to be able to sit with it and integrate it and allow it to teach you, because it will. So that's another one. And there's, again, I've added journaling exercises and reflection points on here that you may find helpful. I'm totally open to feedback on all of this, since this is new, for me, putting this information in this type of a format. So the next piece is about paying attention. So this connects directly into allowing all forms of information to flow in. So when we pay attention, we begin to notice how things are communicating to us from the world around us, which is a mirror, right? And starting to pay attention to those things. For example, one of my favorites, and I think is very foundational, at least in my practice, is seeing nature as our guide, or seeing nature as our teacher. So whether it be plants that we're working with or animals that we're working with or feeling called to, developing a relationship with the natural world, especially the land upon which we live, and the land that the community that we live in is connected to, is very powerful. And taking the time to develop that relationship and to notice what is showing up from nature, and yeah, just opening yourself up to that. The other thing is synchronicity. So noticing, for me, when I'm in alignment, when I'm in a place of surrender and allowing, there's an incredible amount of synchronicity that happens. And granted, I will say that over time, I notice it less and less because it is just normal. It's not so much I don't notice it, it's just like, it's not surprising to me. It's just a given, like whether it's I'm seeing multiple numbers in, whether it's on my clock or my tablet or my phone or in my car or, on the license plates of cars in front of me, whether it's, thinking of someone and they contact me, whether it's, these are just very small little indications, but my life is weaved with these things, and it happens all the time, which points me and my focus back to trusting the information that's coming through that's unseen, right? Like I'm experiencing it from my intuition. So synchronicity. Another one is dreams. Paying attention to our dreams, and those can be dreams while we're sleeping at night. It can be insights and sort of visions or dreams that are happening while we're in meditation or shavasana, yoga nidra, or doing breath work, or taking a walk in the woods or whatever, right? So paying attention to that, and why I think that's important is that our subconscious has its own language that it's, and our intuition has its own language. And so as we begin to pay attention to how that shows up to us and being able to learn what some of the symbology or the archetypal aspects that are showing up, we begin to learn about ourselves in a deeper way. And a lot of times those things are connected to our ancestral inheritance, and we don't even realize that it's coming through because of where we come from. But again, that's something to investigate for yourself and to look into. But I highly recommend keeping a dream journal because that will also help to cultivate that. The last thing that I mention in this particular post, and I look forward to unpacking the next sort of chapter of this, of developing our intuition. And these are just like prerequisites. These are just like foundational ideas to think about and sit with and that sort of thing. But the final thing that I share is doubting the doubt. Because doubt really has the ability to pull the rug out from underneath our imagination and our creativity. And oftentimes it comes in when sometimes it's subconscious, sometimes it's not. One of those agreements that I talked about is being threatened, right? So doubt is going to come in. Doubt can show up as fear, but it's when it's looking out for those places where my mind tries to tell me that I'm just making a bunch of stuff up. Because that happens quite a bit. And so a huge part of developing my skill of connecting to my intuition and allowing it to guide my life has been to recognize when doubt is coming in to try to disempower what it is that I'm learning. And the more I recognize that and not judge it, but just consciously and intentionally shift my awareness and say, I recognize this is happening, but I'm not going to buy into that. Like, I know deep within me that this information that I'm receiving is not only valid, but extraordinarily valuable. So in any case, the last few things that I'll say are just that, the reason why it's so important to me to share this information is that as each day goes by and I have the blessed opportunity to be able to do what I love and what I feel deeply called to share in the world, the only way that I've been able to do that is by trusting my intuition. And it has taken me some places, I'll be quite honest with you, that I didn't want to go. And there's no way that if I had been aware of where it was guiding me, that I would have signed up for it. But it has been invaluable. It has been the initiatory process that has prepared me to follow my, for lack of a better term, my calling. This very strong resonance of where my life is going, what I'm here to do, and learning as I go and along the way the tools that I need, the skills that I need to develop, the qualities and characteristics that need to be developed in order to support that path. And so, for me to learn how to put this information in a format that I can share with people is a skill that I'm now understanding is extremely important. Because I believe that the more of us that learn to recognize and overcome these unconscious agreements or programming that we've signed up for, that is keeping us from really stepping into our authenticity and stepping into our personal power, the more people that actually do that, the more we evolve as individuals and as communities and as, a collective consciousness. And so therefore, it's definitely important to me to share that with people in a way that has some value and can be implemented and worked with. So anyways, that was what I wanted to share with you all this morning. I just want to thank you as always for joining me. You can check out the blog post that I'm talking about on my Facebook page. I would love for you to read it, share it with anyone that you think is would be interested. I'm interested in feedback, insights, personal experiences, questions, anything at all. I'm learning. It's all new to put it in this type of format and share it in this way. And so anything that will help me do that in a more quality-driven way, I want to know about that. So in any case, I just want to thank you all so much for joining me this morning. And I hope that you have a beautiful day. And I'll be back on Friday, the same time, 8:30. And if you're interested in doing some yoga, I have the Inner Guide Flow class tonight via Zoom from 6 to 7:15. The link is on my Facebook page. So that's all I have for you today. I just want to give gratitude and appreciation to all the supportive energy that came in for this blog post and for sharing and talking about it with you today. This concludes our time together this morning, and I'll see you again on Friday. Thank you.